indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. This is the, before we start things tonight, I want to ask the members of the audience to observe a moment of silence. We lost a fine Radnor Township police officer last night to a fatality. John Miller, a 9-year veteran of the force, 34 years old, a family man, and beloved by his fellow officers and highly respected by his supervisors and superiors. So may he rest in peace and God have mercy on his soul. So let's observe a moment of silence. Thank you. All right. We are holding a meeting tonight. It's the third installment of our conditional use hearing concerning the application by Villanova University for conditional use of property that they own on Lancaster Avenue. You'll recall that on March 31st of this year, we passed an ordinance number 2013-21 under our Radnor Township zoning ordinance, section 280-68, which created a special zoning district, the Comprehensive Integrated College Development District, which would allow, if certain conditions are satisfied and certain requirements are met, the university and other universities within the township to develop their property in novel ways. So the application for conditional development was filed by the university on May 29th. It was advertised July 14th and 21st. The Board of Commissioners made an appointment of William Bola, Esquire, to represent the township in this matter, since the Township Board of Commissioners is sitting as a quasi-adjudicatory body. And Mr. Bola, thank you for coming tonight. And John Rice has outlined the order of the presentations here and the evidence and exhibits the university would present, and is still in the process of presenting its evidence, calling its witnesses. After that, the Township of Radnor would do the same, and then any parties that have been designated as parties, any persons that have been designated as parties to this proceeding may follow after the Township's takes its turn. Just lastly, I'll say that the first installment was on July 28th. The second was on August 21st. Tonight is the third installment. We have one more scheduled on September 18th, and I'm hopeful that between tonight's session and the 18th of September, we can finish the conditional use process. So, John, do you have anything to say at this point?
No, although I don't agree we'll finish next week. So at the end of the night tonight, I think we need to have our calendars ready to pick some more dates through this month and into the next month. I think where we left off at the last hearing, Mr. Keneally, you were done with your last witness. You have some additional witnesses tonight, is that right?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Ball, do you have anything?
I do, Mr. Rice. First of all, Mr. Higgins, I thought the next hearing was the 7th.
17th, next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. Secondly, as I mentioned, or you may be aware, due to the tragedy, well, let me start this way. I understand from Mr. Keneally, who was kind enough to present with us the list of witnesses that he intends to call this evening, that among them is his traffic engineer who's going to bring in a new traffic plan, a revised traffic plan. I've been encouraged, requested, and heartily asked by the staff, since none of the police officers who handle the traffic situation here in the township will be available this evening, to have that matter out of respect, have that matter pushed off to next week. So on behalf of the township manager and staff who has asked me to make that request, I am making it. And I'm making it now because, you know, we may not get to them, you never know, but we do have your traffic engineer here. She's only necessary to hear the testimony of that engineer. So if it's determined by the commissioners not to proceed with that testimony, we could let at least her go this evening. So that's the request I've been asked to make, and ask that you kindly consider it.
Well, Mr. Cornelia, you have your economist and one other witness or two other witnesses?
The intent tonight was to present the economist, to present a plan as to evacuation that was requested by the township engineer, and also to present just part of the direct testimony of our traffic expert, Frank Tavani. I had sent an email to Mr. Bola suggesting that we hold off any cross-examination that he would have of Mr. Tavani until next meeting anyway. So the only part of his testimony was going to be direct testimony this evening, and I would assume that since Mr. Tavani is actually doing an updated traffic impact study, that he would actually be testifying on direct examination next meeting as well as this evening. In that regards, I would think that the township would have sufficient opportunity to prepare cross-examination by reviewing transcripts and, of course, reports as well. So I would request respectfully that we proceed, but I understand the situation and whatever the board decides.
Okay, it's really up to the board. I think the concern is that from the township staff side is that all the testimony would happen tonight, and it obviously is not going to all happen tonight from the traffic engineer. So, and there'll be no cross-examination tonight. So, it's up to the board. My suggestion is the witnesses are here. You've set aside at least 3 hours to get through this process, but Mr. Keneal, you're not willing to agree to that, I take it. Is that right? You understand the issue, but
I understand the issue, and
okay.
And just one other item, too. The special event plan that I know that the police are interested in is not being presented this evening. That would be presented next meeting as well.
Okay.
Mr. Bola, I'm not quite sure what you've learned from the staff. We did not intend, there was no plan to have any police officers participate or testify this evening. Isn't that right?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, that's right.
And so the idea here is the concept of traffic safety, desirable to avoid that tonight? Is that?
I think the request was made because the traffic safety officer will not be here tonight to actually see the testimony. And as I say, the request was made of me out of respect for the officer and the police department. That's the request that was made of me.
All right. What is the sense of the other members of the
Well,
board
Nick,
on
what
this?
do we have to do tonight? What are we going to do tonight?
Mr. Tavani's testimony would just be his direct
No, I
testimony.
know, but is there anyone else you have to testify?
I
We can
have
move-
two other witnesses. We have Lee here, who's the economist. We have the evacuation plan, which I suspect will be short. So probably, I don't know how much time we're going to have left with Mr. Tavani anyway, but I did intend, if we had time left, I don't have anyone else to back him up.
Okay.
I intended to present him if we did have time left.
Well, why don't we go on and do what they have to do, and then we'll decide that later.
So my sense is that the traffic safety unit and staff traffic spend the majority of their time during special events down at Villanova and other events at Villanova. And I think it would be in our best interest for them to be here firsthand to hear the testimony of the traffic engineer. They understand the traffic flows at that location better than anyone in this room. And
I thought we were going to do special events at another time.
well, but they're also down there daily. They're down there during
No, I
traffic.
understand that,
so-
but we're not doing special events.
I understand that.
Okay, all right.
But I think it's important because they understand the traffic flow through that area better than anyone in this room. So I think it would be in our best interest for that to be delayed. It seems to me that we have other witnesses here that have to be heard, and that's going to take at least 2 to 3 hours, so.
All right, let's proceed on that basis, unless there's some strenuous objection from any other commissioner. Let's proceed on that basis.
We shouldn't have direct if we're not going to have an opportunity for redirect and to hear the direct testimony firsthand.
Now, just to let you know, obviously, there's a transcript prepared of this hearing as well as a TV record, so it's not really putting anyone at any inconvenience, and actually it's helping the township because they're going to have a chance to prepare even more than if they needed to prepare that evening of and present cross-examination. But whatever the board decides. Obviously,
Well,
I'm
let's
not
go
in a
on- let's
position
go on
to
and
sit
see how
here
far we
and
go.
clamor one way or another considering the
So
circumstances.
essentially,
We're all
Jim, you're saying don't
sympathetic.
make the decision now, wait until we get to that point and see.
Let's hear the witnesses that
See how far you get.
will avoid traffic.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Cornelia.
Witnesses sworn in?
I do. Lee Huang, Lee, last name Huang.
Lee, what is your profession?
I'm an economic consultant.
And I've marked and pre-marked and handed up to the board what I've marked with Exhibit A11. Is that your curriculum vitae?
Yes.
And could you tell us briefly about your educational background?
Bachelor of Science in Economics, dual concentration in Accounting and Management at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. Master's in Government Administration at the Fells Institute of Government of the University of Pennsylvania, dual certificate in Economic Development and Public Finance.
And what's your current profession?
I'm a Senior Vice President and Principal at eConsult Solutions, which is a Philadelphia-based economic consulting firm.
And how long have you been employed by Econ?
I started in May of 2006, so 8 years.
And prior to that, how were you employed?
I worked for 10 years in an executive management position at a not-for-profit organization called the Enterprise Center, located in Philadelphia.
And have you testified, have you been sworn as an expert in various municipal authorities previously?
Yes.
Have you also been sworn in court as an expert on economic matters?
Yes.
Which court were you sworn in?
Montgomery County.
And actually, you have done an analysis of the economic impact of the proposed development on the public, as well as development's consistency with the township's comprehensive plan.
As was requested by Villanova University, yes.
Any questions on qualifications?
Mr. Ball?
I have no questions nor objection.
I would ask that he be considered an expert in economic analysis.
Does the board have any questions for this, just on the qualifications of this?
Just the bachelor's degree was in economics from what institution?
Wharton School of
You got
Business.
to speak up.
Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, Bachelor of Science, Economics.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy of his CV in the package from the previous?
It's A11.
I think the CV was handed out first, with all the other exhibits.
It was handed out on the first evening. I've reviewed it.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, then this gentleman will be accepted as an expert witness in economics. That's why he's being offered, correct?
That's correct. Lee, what areas did you particularly review as part of your report?
There are 4 parts of the development impact statement that we were asked to look at: housing market impact, school district impact, commercial retail impact, and overall fiscal impact.
And what did your analysis reveal on the rental housing market impact?
The question there, which is a part of any development impact study, is does the addition of does the new development affect the existing equilibrium of housing supply and housing demand? The economics of student housing are as follows. There's a premium for units near campus in general. 2, students are willing to pay the highest premium because proximity to campus matters the most to them. And three, therefore, all else equal, landlords are going to choose students over other tenants. The landscape of student housing in the township is that, as a matter of public policy, there are a finite number of township-approved student housing units. The vast majority of those student-approved, township-approved student housing units are located near a university campus, and therefore those are desired most highly by students. So the combination of high demand and constrained supply is such that were there to be any openings in these township-approved student housing, i.e., should a student that is living in one of those units shift to the proposed development, it will be almost certain that that vacant unit would be replaced by another student. That is our finding. It is possible, but not very likely, that some or all of the following things may happen. One, a single-family unit will be desired by a non-student. A multifamily unit will be desired by a non-student. Multiple multifamily units would be converted back to a single family and desired by a non-student. Or landlords might choose to rent to a non-student once the student has vacated. Those are very unlikely scenarios, so it is my opinion that there will be no substantive increase in non-student population within those units and within the township as a result of the shuffling that may occur upon the addition of the new proposed development.
And the main reason for that is students are looking at location. Is their primary concern?
Not all students, but many students value proximity to campus, and there are many more such students that are interested in having a university proximate location than there are township-approved units. So it is my contention that should there be any of those students who vacate a unit, there will be sufficient demand from other students. And of course, there may be demand from non-students, but given the economics of student housing, a landlord is going to want to charge a certain rent, and a student is going to be much more likely to want to bear that rent because of the premium they associate with proximity to campus.
Okay, and your analysis just dealt with Radnor Township, is that correct?
That's correct.
So you didn't consider Lower Merion or any other surrounding townships?
No.
Now, how about the impact on the school district? What did your analysis reveal for that?
Sure. New developments, it's helpful to look at their impact on a school district because new developments may involve new households. Some of those households may have school-aged children. Some of those school-aged children may end up in the public schools. And the addition of those public school children may incur additional expenditures by the school district. That is the reason why development impact statements and fiscal impact statements look at the extent to which a development is going to lead to more school-aged children within a particular municipality. That will not happen directly as a result of the student dorm, but it could be that the existence of the student dorm causes a vacancy in these township-approved student units as students shift into the proposed development, and that families then locate into those newly vacant units. And if those families have children, then in fact that would have an impact on the school district and its expenditures. I would, however, note that, as I previously said, it is highly unlikely that there will be an increase in non-student population in these units. For a variety of reasons. And two, even if there was, it would be a very small number such that the marginal cost to the school district would be effectively zero.
Did you also look at the impact of commercial retail as a result of development?
Yes.
And what did your analysis reveal for that?
The intent of a commercial retail impact as part of an analysis like this is to understand the extent to which the addition of new retail supply may crowd out and therefore negatively impact existing retail within the township, which is a valid concern. We did a couple of things in looking at this. One is that we looked at current demand and current supply, and there is vastly demand as associated by the amount of consumption by township residents and supply as measured by the amount of sales by township merchants. Demand vastly outstrips supply, and while it's a more complicated story than that, that fact suggests that there is more than enough demand such that the addition of new supply would not crowd out existing supply. Furthermore, and the second thing that we looked at was the actual plans by the university, and there's not a lot of net new retail involved. It's simply an extension of existing retail. It is my understanding that the retail that is associated with this development is student serving and will be promoted exclusively to students. So it is not likely to materially shift demand from other township retail to the proposed development. There is a possibility that the concentration of new student population within the township could in fact increase demand to other township retail. That may or may not happen. It's probably not material, but it is possible. So rather than resulting in less business for existing township residents, which I don't think will be the case, it is even possible that it will result in increased business for township businesses.
Mr. Caniglia, the audience has asked that you move closer to the mic because they can't hear you.
What did your analysis reveal as to the fiscal impact on the township?
Fiscal impact analysis is a standard type of analysis for situations like this. The intent is to look at the extent to which development imposes any upfront or ongoing net new burden on a jurisdiction. And it's important here, I use the phrase net new, or to use a more economic term, marginal cost. What is the difference in expenditures prior to the development versus upon the arrival of the development? This is to be contrasted with this notion of average cost. Most human beings, i.e. non-economists, think in terms of average costs, the cost per student, the cost per resident, the cost per this, the cost per that, on average, which is simply, of course, the total cost divided by the number of students, the number of residents, the number of police officers, the number of calls, what have you. What is actually relevant in fiscal impact analyses is not the average cost, but the marginal cost. On the margins, when you add this development, given that there is an existing roster of activity and expenditures associated with running the township, how much more, if any, do those expenditures go up as a result of the existence of, in this case, the proposed residential development? Up front, it's our understanding that any burden is going to be more than offset by taxes and fees paid by the university and by contractors and subs that are employed by the university in the upfront construction of the development. Most of that burden, by the way, is in a sense fixed. It is not net new. I do not want to insinuate that it is not a burden for the township staff to do all of the administrative things associated with the development, but that is part of their existing job. And I do not believe that the addition of this new project, however large it is, would involve the requirement of overtime or extra staff or extra materials associated with the normal course of administrative functions of the township, which would then include the addition of processing this new development. The taxes and fees, of course, are net new. If the development doesn't happen, there are no taxes and fees associated with it. If the development happens, it does generate taxes and fees. So up front, we don't believe that there will be any negative, and in fact is likely going to be a positive fiscal impact for the township. Ongoing, similarly, most operating expenditures are fixed and do not vary depending on activity levels. If you look at the different major expenditure categories of the township, you can look at them and you can see that if you were to add 5% more activity, 100 more people, those things would not go up. Your overhead costs will be the same regardless if your population is X or if it's X plus 50, for example. There are a few exceptions that are worth talking about. typically, and I'll talk about each of them in relation to this particular project. Public works are things, infrastructure, there may be additional burden associated with a new development that may increase theoretically. In this case, I'm not aware that that will take place. We will be hearing at some point this month about the traffic engineer and the reduction, I assume, in commuting and therefore in wear and tear on the roads associated with moving more students onto campus, which results in less commuting. I'm aware of, through the other experts, various stormwater management initiatives that are intended to mitigate, if not reduce, the public works burden on the township. So that's my interpretation of the effect on the township's budget in terms of public works. Police and EMS may go up because of the existence of new residents on campus. Understand, though, that these are not completely new people to the township. They are already students. The university is not increasing their enrollment. They're just increasing the number of people that will be sleeping at night on campus. So the increment in people within the township, and therefore in the possibility of police calls and EMS calls, is one needs to take that into consideration. We did have some information on the amount of police and EMS calls associated with the campus. We did some calculations to try to estimate the proportion of additional police calls and EMS calls. Extrapolated over a year, it does not rise to a level where we believe that either function would require additional personnel costs, equipment costs, capital costs, any costs of that nature. And finally, with fire, it's my understanding, again, that that may go up again because of the addition of population on campus. But first of all, the Bryn Mawr Fire Company is a volunteer fire company. And second of all, the Radnor Fire Company is reimbursed for services provided. So it's my understanding that there would be no increase in expenditure burden on the part of the township.
Have you done an analysis as to the amount of fees to be generated by the development?
Yes.
And what did that analysis reveal?
We believe that there will be fees and gross receipts, taxes paid by the university, by the general contractor, and by subcontractors, totaling about $5.6 million. That is a one-time, non-recurring amount that will be generated during the construction period and only during that construction period.
And when you mentioned fees, I believe you did mention it's both contractors and subcontractors. Are they liable for business privilege tax?
Yes.
Finally, is it your opinion, or what is your opinion as to the economic impact of the proposed development on the community?
Overall, I think that it will be positive, and I think it will be significant. Any major construction project represents temporary economic activity. There is a spillover effect that results from that economic activity. So not only will people be directly employed, some of whom will be township residents, not only will it generate temporary increases in tax bases and therefore more tax revenues for the township, but the construction activity will itself create a ripple effect from people making money and spending some of that money within the township, goods and services being procured, some of which will be procured within the township, resulting in increased economic activity within the township. And that is typical for any sort of construction project, is that there is a direct impact associated with the project itself, as well as a ripple effect or spillover effect associated with people making money and spending some of that in the locality, as well as some portion of the goods and services being procured within that locality. Ongoing, there will be additional operational activity. There will be students. They are consumers. Some of that consumption will be taking place within the walls of that development, but some of it may also be taking place outside the walls with other township merchants. These are students that are already on campus, so they may not, this may not result in a net increase in business for the other township retail businesses, but it could. And so that is a possibility, that the ongoing impact would also be positive.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Counselor.
Sir, did you prepare the conditional use development impact statement that was submitted into evidence?
I developed portions of it related to the 4 topics that I addressed in my remarks.
All right, Nick, do you have the exhibit number on that? A1C. And A1C is the thick packet that was developed by your office under your supervision, I gather.
No, I contributed sections of this report.
Okay. But you're testifying as to all of it?
No, sir. Just my sections.
Which sections?
The economic sections is the sections that he contributed.
Well, let's identify.
Sure.
What parts of this written report, because there's a list of authors on the front page. Now, on page 20, there's an impact on Radnor School District. I assume that's...
The table of contents pretty much tells us what you
Right.
testified to. Transportation, schools, commercial.
Yeah, you will find items that I prepared, which were then rolled up into this report on pages 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27,
And so you're not going to be able to testify on pages 1 through 20 of the report?
correct, and 29, and 30.
Well, that's going to save some time. There's a lot of cross-examination.
Yeah, I'm sorry, let me continue. And 30, 31.
Okay, well, I'll try to take you through, Mr. Huang, those portions that appear to be your work.
Okay.
Frankly, both the township's planner and myself were confused about the report with regard to the opinion stated in it concerning whether the student rental facilities currently in existence would go to students or to new families, because the report states both, does it not?
The report states that the likelihood is that the vast majority of them will go to other students, that there is the possibility that a very small proportion of the units would go to non-students.
Okay. Then let's start off where I had intended to start off. You mentioned a couple of times that the taxes and fees produced by this development will positively impact the township. Sir, Villanova University is a tax-exempt institution, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Is it a 501c3 institution?
Yes, it is.
So it does not pay property taxes?
It does not pay property taxes except for properties that are not central to their core mission.
All right. Are the dormitories central to their core mission?
My assumption is that the dormitories will be property tax exempt
The Performing Arts Center,
also.
the parking garage,
Correct.
and the new parking spaces.
I believe so.
So the entire development is tax exempt from property taxes.
I'm not a tax lawyer, but that's my assumption.
Is the bistro proposed subject to taxes?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yes, sir. Is the bistro that's proposed subject to taxes?
I'm not able to
Specify
answer
what
that
type of
question.
taxes- What type of taxes?
Gross receipts tax?
I'm not able to answer that question.
Are you aware that the university has considered some of its facilities and uses in the past part of their core, that might otherwise be subjected to gross receipts tax as part of their core mission and therefore not subject to those taxes?
I have no response to that. You asked a question about the taxes and fees in my testimony. What I was referring to is that related to construction. You're talking about ongoing things, and I did not look at that.
You didn't look at the taxes that would be produced by this development?
Not ongoing.
Because there were none?
It was not in my scope to look at that.
But you mentioned in your testimony that the taxes and fees would have positive impact.
Up front, yes. During the construction period, there will be a one-time gain in taxes and fees to the township.
What taxes?
The university and subcontractors will pay permit fees, and the general contractor and the subcontractors will pay gross receipts taxes.
You've estimated that those receipts in a table in Exhibit A1C, correct?
Yes.
And that's on page 30?
Yes.
The taxes that you've estimated are the gross receipt taxes by the general contractor and by subcontractors, and also by, in some small part, by contractors of the university, correct?
Yes.
All right. Are you aware that the taxes imposed upon those mercantile establishments that have a base of operations in this township, in Radnor Township?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yes. Are you aware that the gross receipts taxes are imposed only upon those contractors or subcontractors that have a base of operations in Radnor Township?
I'm going to object to that because that's an inaccurate statement. Anyone who does work in Radnor Township is subject to business privilege tax.
Well, the objection's overruled, first of all. I think the question is, he either knows it or he doesn't know it. So go ahead, Mr. Bull, ask the question again.
All right. Are you aware, sir, whether all contractors or subcontractors must pay or will pay gross receipts taxes to Radnor Township, those that are employed in connection with this development?
It's my understanding that that activity that takes place within the township is subject to gross receipts taxes.
Okay. So therefore, your expert opinion and your testimony on behalf of Villanova University is that the estimate, the reasonable estimate for the production of those taxes is an additional $1.34 million over what the university is spending on its fees?
That is what page 30 says. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Have you done any analysis of what the property taxes would be if the university was not tax exempt?
Objection. It has nothing to do with the development. The property that's already being referred to is already tax exempt. There is no impact on the township by keeping that property tax exempt. No negative.
I just...
Well, wait a minute. That's an argument. That's not really an
Right.
objection. So the objection's overruled. Again, he either has or he hasn't.
I heard the question, and I did not look at that.
Excuse me 1 minute. Do you know, sir, whether the university would be willing to provide a list of all of the contractors and subcontractors who will be employed in their addresses to the township at the time of their employment?
That would be a question for the university. I do not know the answer to that question.
Mr. Ball, hold on a minute, but did they provide it to you? Because you did an analysis. Do you have a list of all the, you put a number on this, so do you have a list?
I do not.
Okay.
Well, they wouldn't be selected yet, would they?
Probably not.
No, it's an estimate at this point.
Yeah.
Wouldn't they just have to provide whatever anybody else provides? I mean, so it's, when the time comes, they'll provide the same thing that anyone else provides, correct?
I'm not sure contractors in the township provide those lists to.
I will say that
Township.
I understand the objection that Nick has made, but I'm led to believe by township staff who tells me that the township tax attorney has indicated that in order to be taxable for gross receipts, the contractors must have a base of operations within the township. I'm not making that up. I got that from
That's
the
not-
experts.
That's not my
Okay,
understanding of how it
but
works.
that's, I mean, that's a legal issue that you can put a witness on to say that.
Okay, and certainly I can question about it.
Sure.
Okay.
You can ask him. He either knows that or he doesn't know.
So, and again, I'm going to ask, you may not know the answer, sir, but if I tell you that I have obtained an estimate of property taxes that would result, were this not a tax-exempt institution, of $1,900,000 annually, would you be in a position to agree or disagree with that?
I'd have to see where that number came from.
Okay. Sir, are you aware, going back now to the student housing, are you aware whether or not there is a current trend in the housing market towards rental rather than purchase?
In general, the rental markets are more popular than before. That is correct.
Would that be a factor that would tend to indicate that there may be more student housing facilities purchased and rented to non-students?
As I mentioned in my testimony, that is possible, that a unit that is currently occupied by a student would become vacated as a result of the development. That vacancy may be filled by a non-student. That would require two things. One is that there would have to be a non-student household that was interested in that unit. And two is there would have to be a landlord that would be preferring to rent to that non-student household rather than to a student. I am not saying that that won't happen. I do believe that that will happen very infrequently.
So you opine that, by and large, the student housing facilities will be replaced by other students so that they remain student housing facilities?
Yes.
In some testimony that is received, and in other parts of this impact study, it would indicate that the moving of the students from the student housing facilities to the new dorms would therefore decrease the number of trips back and forth to the university from the student housing facilities and have a positive impact, that is expending less money for road repairs and maintenance and things like that. Is that correct?
I believe that will be correct because if you think about spatially, where do students live, and then almost every day they have to come on campus. If you added up all those trips, the amount will be smaller upon the arrival of the development project rather than before it's arrived, because there will be more students that are already on campus. So the fact that some of those student units will still be inhabited by students, that is true, but that still does mean that the amount of commuting distance will be shrunk as a result of landing more students on campus.
Okay. Is page 26 one of your pages, Mr. Huang?
Yes.
The plans that have been received, according to the review by the township engineers, indicates that there will be between, the project proposes 20 to 25,000 square feet of retail and restaurant space, but the plans show 17,000. Are you aware of why that discrepancy might exist?
I don't know the answer to that.
I gather, sir, you're not in a position to answer questions concerning the impact upon the surrounding neighborhood of the development?
When you say impact on surrounding neighborhoods, what are you referring to?
Noise, light, water, et cetera.
No.
Would you agree, since you've referred to the fees that would be produced, and I think you said they are one-time fees, so those fees would not produce any revenue or income or receipt to the township in future years?
Correct. Those are occurring during the construction project and are not recurring or ongoing in nature.
Did you consider the township's capital fund when you wrote this portion of the economic study?
We did look at the township finances to understand the mechanics of where the township spends money so that we could discern the extent to which there would be a marginal impact on finances. But I did not do a deep dive on their capital plans.
Well, the analysis that you wrote did compare the general fund budget of approximately $31.5 million to the community development department budget. Is that correct?
We did look at the annual operating budget of the township and what it's composed of.
And I believe the report states that since the community development department budget is only 3.2% of the general fund budget, it's not likely to have any meaningful impact. Is that correct?
One of the ways that you look at whether a marginal impact in an expenditure category will be material is to look at the size of the expenditure category in the first place. So you want to look at expenditure categories that represent a significant part of the budget to begin with, and then you want to see whether those will increase as a result of the thing that you're proposing.
And did you, when you examined those issues, did you determine whether there would be any impact upon the township's capital fund?
I did not look at that.
Right. The capital fund would pay for the township's fleet replacement, would it not?
I'm sorry, fleet, you mean?
Fleet, cars, vehicles, trucks?
I believe that that would be part of the capital fund.
Do you know that it also contains in Radnor Township a $300,000 fire equipment contribution?
Okay.
And the capital fund would also be devoted to the infrastructure improvements that you mentioned would be necessary from the development. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's my understanding of why permits are assessed for construction projects, is to pay for any new infrastructure that is required for the development.
All right, and you did mention that the fees are intended, at least in large part, to cover the costs and expenses of the various roles that township government must play in a development of this extent. Am I right?
Yes, if plans need to be reviewed, a human being that is employed by the township needs to review them. So that is a cost. The question is whether that cost is the same or more if the development happens versus if it doesn't happen.
Are you aware that the township will have to employ independent contractors, outside employees, to perform many of these inspection tasks?
I'm not aware that that's going to happen.
Did you contact the township's finance director, Bill White, to speak with him about these expenses?
I did not.
Would you be surprised to know that Mr. White estimated the increase in capital fund expenses of $1 to $2 million for the police, road maintenance, improvements for signalization caused by this development?
I have not seen that analysis, so I will not comment on whether I think that that number makes sense. It does seem high.
Okay, thank you. In connection with your analysis of any potential increase in expenses for the police department, did you meet with any member of the police department to discuss their conclusions or gather service information from them?
I did not.
In connection with your testimony with regard to the fire companies, did you meet with either the Bryn Mawr or the Radnor fire companies to get information from them regarding what they might expect from this development?
No.
Do you know whether either of the fire companies may need a new ladder fire truck to handle the dormitories?
I assume that they will not, because I assume that there are buildings of similar height in the township already.
All right, I got that. Yeah. I don't know what that means. Do you know how many members of staff at Radnor Township are in the Community Development Department?
I do not know the staffing allocation.
And you would agree that the fees that you've testified to do not cover the infrastructure or other ongoing expenses that might be incurred by the Community Development Department. Is that correct?
If there is an increase, I do not know. The fees that I mentioned in my analysis are related to upfront matters and would be a one-time gain to the township, not an ongoing gain.
I believe you indicated in your report that your opinion was that there would be an increase in police calls approximately 55 per year as a result of this development. Is that your number?
Yes.
Did you compare that to the total expenses of the police department to determine what the amount of money that might be is?
No, because that would be an average cost approach, and that's not what's relevant to the township in terms of whether it will incur any net new expenditures associated with the increase in police calls. The question is to what extent will new expenditures be required as a result of that increase in calls? rather than to say that currently the average cost per call is X, and therefore adding 55 calls is 55 times X in additional cost.
And just to be, no, strike that. You indicated that your opinion was that the new retail uses would be, I think your words were student serving, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
All right. So what is your opinion as to whether there will be any increase in gross receipts taxes for existing businesses in Radnor Township as a result of these students moving into the dorms and these students serving retail uses?
Well, directly related to the student-serving businesses, I did not look at, but as mentioned before, the increased concentration of students being on campus, living on campus, does not necessarily, but may result in their frequenting township businesses more, thus generating more economic activity for township businesses, thus resulting in more tax revenues for the township.
But there's no increase in enrollment as a result of this development, right?
There's no increase in enrollment, but there's an increase in the amount of time that students spend on campus as a result of many of them shifting to living on campus. So in the course of a student's day, they make purchases at various times. For many students, they will be spending much more time within the township rather than outside the township.
And if strike that. Right, well, you can. Okay. Oh, the table again on page 30, I think. On page 29 of the report, the university suggests that the value of the project is $269 million. Would you agree?
That's the information that was given to me by the university.
You've also suggested that the business privilege taxes to be paid by the contractors, general and sub, would be approximately $1.34 million.
That is from table 5.1 on page 30, yes.
All right. Would you agree that the gross receipts necessary to generate $1.34 million in tax revenue would be $446.6 million?
The gross receipts base upon which taxes are calculated can be more than the direct construction because of this multiplier effect of contractors doing work and then contractors subbing to subs and then subs and so on and so forth.
So you've understated the project value for that reason?
No, the project value is the project value, but the base is not necessarily just that amount because there are payments to contractors and then those contractors pay to subs and then subs have their vendors, and so there is a ripple effect.
Okay, I understand your testimony. Anything else? Thank you, that's all I had.
Okay. Let's go to the other parties, and I would just ask that if questions have already been asked, please don't ask them again. New questions on this witness's testimony only. So, Tish Long. Okay. Leslie, you are,
I'm representing RTA. I'm a member of RTA.
okay.
I am a member of the Radnor
And state your,
F2PR, sorry.
so state your name.
Leslie Morgan. And I have a degree in economics from Lafayette College, and I've been in commercial development for a few decades. Your first name again, I'm sorry?
Lee.
Lee, hi, Leslie. If I repeat, John, please don't get too mad. I typed them up beforehand, so I didn't know what was going to be asked.
Well, you can only ask what his testimony was. So you must have had a vision of what his testimony
I
was going to
did.
be.
I thought it was on economic
But-
impact analysis,
but go
which
ahead.
I'm very familiar with.
Okay, and just, Leslie, you're not appearing for yourself, you're
No.
appearing on behalf of...
Yes.
For the group, right.
If I repeat, you guys can remind me of that. My first question, Lee, is how many rental units are in Radnor Township which rent to Villanova students? You testified to that we have 125 student-approved units, but
I don't think that's his testimony, but I believe the report does say that. Go ahead.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Morgan. It's my understanding that there are 125 township-approved student units that are available for university students at 2 and capped at 2 per, so that would be 250 spots. I do not know how many of them are inhabited by Villanova students. I assume the vast majority, but less than the 250.
I'm going to skip my question number 2 because you've answered that. Do you know that what the vacancy rate, have you, in your analysis, when you analyzed this and testified, did you take into account the vacancy rate of student housing rental units in Radnor Township?
It's my understanding that it is essentially close to zero.
How is that your understanding? Maybe I'm phrasing that. Where did you get that information?
I don't recall, but it was something that we looked at very early on. We wanted to make sure that all 125 of those units was, in fact, occupied and not vacant.
Did you do a forecast, an actual numerical forecast, of what the vacancy rate of student housing rental units in Radnor Township might be after the completion of the VU project on Lancaster Avenue?
Yes, my prediction is that it will remain the same as now, which is zero or close to zero, because the artificially constrained supply combined with the significantly high amount of demand is such that any vacancies would be replaced, any students that move out would be replaced by other students. So there would be no net change in the number of students inhabited in these units.
So essentially, there may be a handful of the 125, but we're talking about in the high 90s to 100%.
At any given time, there's going to be vacancies because of mismatches, but yes, generally speaking, it will be close to zero.
Okay, thank you. what is the average annual rental rate of student housing per student in Radnor Township?
I don't know that number.
Did you look the monthly or annual or the Villanova rate?
Can you, I don't, sure I
So
understand
what I'm
your question.
looking for is when you're looking at economic impact, it's not just occupancy, it's also the per unit price derived. And even if you stay at 100%, but you have to offer that product at a lower rate to maintain the 100%, you still have impact. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, if it was the case, let's look at these 125 units. If it was the case that the existence of the development sucked away existing customers, if you will, and those units had trouble finding new customers, one way of responding to that would be that landlords would lower their rents. And that would have a negative impact. But again, because of the artificially constrained supply as a matter of public policy in the township, combined with the significant amount of demand, I don't believe that landlords will have to lower their prices in order to accommodate and occupy these units. And I don't think that they'll want to, because they will be able to find plenty of students that will want to occupy these units. So it's my prediction that the number of students and the rent levels will be unchanged.
Thank you. What is the average annual rental rate of student housing per student for on campus or the projected? What I'm saying is, if you have all this demand, and even on the perimeter, you're saying that those people are willing to pay that money, but they can't get in close, is what I'm been hearing tonight.
They can't get in because there's not enough supply.
Exactly. So,
It has nothing to do with price.
right. So your contention is that even on the outer perimeters, whether it be the people living in King of Prussia, they would gladly pay that premium to get close to campus.
Enough will. Again, not everyone wants to be near campus, but there are many more thousands of Radnor, Villanova and Cabrini and Eastern students that want to live near their campuses than there are units that are available to them.
And how did you find out that actual data? Like, that those people, they're living on the peripheral, whether it be down in Chesterbrook or in King of Prussia, and they would pay that premium, but they can't get in. How did you find that data? Where did you get that data?
Well, we did not ask we did not do any primary research, but it's based on the simple economics of student housing and of supply and demand, that if you have a product that people want and you artificially constrain it for whatever reason, good public policy reasons, that you are going to have pent-up demand. And if there is some pressure release, i.e. the addition of new supply, that the over-demand will then soak up the newly available supply.
And the minority is what you're saying is not many of them can't afford to pay that premium, they just can't get the units.
Yeah, again, the students have all sorts of different preferences. They have all sorts of different budgets. So I'm not speaking for all of the thousands and thousands of students that are in play here. But given that the number of available units is 250, it strikes me that there should be no problem if the landlords choose to rent to students to find those students.
Okay. So would it be correct to say that my question number 8 is, and I don't know always how to do the format, Nick, sorry. What is your forecasted amount of devaluation of the Radnor student housing real estate expected to be when the VU dorm project opens in a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year horizon?
That's a relevant question. Let me try to answer that. When you have a constraint imposed on your housing, then that can bid prices up. And when you then introduce new supply, then that can create a value diminishment. I don't think that will happen here because there isn't a matching constraint in demand. In fact, there's a significant amount of demand over and above the existing supply. So I don't believe that the arrival of the new supply will cram down prices and therefore values for the existing township-approved student housing.
Thank you. But as an economic expert,
Question, please.
yes, in your experience, would you say that if there are units left open because of the swoosh, we'll call it the big swoosh, when the VU project opens, what happens to the value of that real estate?
It is possible that, well, it is probable that units will become temporarily available. Students that are currently living in township-approved housing will say, I want to live on campus. They will vacate the township-approved housing. They will choose to live in the new dormitory. What happens next? It is possible that landlords will not be able to find any tenants. It is possible that landlords will only find tenants who are non-students and who are less willing to pay the current price level associated with the premium of being near campus. If that were to be the case, then simple property valuation mechanics would suggest that if you get less rent for a property, then it would devalue. Again, given the spatial distribution of these units, the relatively small number of them, and the relatively large number of students that are interested in campus-proximate locations such as these, I believe that that number will be very, very small.
Thank you. I'm skipping over some. If VU opens 1,130 beds, I may have the number wrong a little, for residential living in Radnor Township, would it be in phases? Or is this just going to be a grand opening of all the buildings?
That's not for me to answer.
Okay. Would the value impact be different if the student housing real estate assets, if on student housing real estate assets in Radnor, if VU opened their dorms in phases?
If there was a phasing in of the addition of new supply, would there be a difference in the local real estate markets? I don't think that there will be a difference in the local real estate markets in general because of the switching effect. So whether it's phased or not, I don't know that that makes a material difference.
Does VU, you may not know this, but I'm going to ask it, does VU, like other colleges and universities, ask for the off-campus addresses of their students? It might be part of the Clary Act, this kind of thing, Title IX.
That would be a question for the university.
Okay. How many students attending VU are currently living in Radnor Township?
I don't know that number, but aside from those that live on campus, the number is not supposed to be more than 250.
Right. This is going to be hard for me to explain, and it's from your prior testimony, but something that I don't understand. In the first part of your testimony, you were talking about the demand just outstrips the supply so much that it can come in waves. And even with 1,130 units opening, the swoosh won't be enough to even mitigate the demand that's even on the outer perimeters and probably not even on price per unit. However, on the flip side, you said these students, when you were talking about both police, administrative, and Radnor GDP, meaning retail sales and other, uses that they might actually, you said that that impact was going to be marginal because they're all here. So if only 250 are living off campus, but we're talking about 1,130, I did the math, and it's like 830 extra students that you're claiming on part of the argument, it seemed, we're already here. We don't need new police, we don't need new roads, the retail's not going to suffer. So where are they living if they're not living in the 125 units? there's 830 people. I mean, it didn't balance to me. Can you explain those two different arguments so that I can understand the balance?
Sure.
You said they were already here.
We were asked to look at housing markets, and housing markets is related to the 250 and whether there is going to be a change in the number of students and by proxy, the attractiveness of those units. I don't think that that will be the case. I also don't think that there will be a material increase in the expenditures associated with the arrival of these students because they're already on campus during the day. It's just changing where they're sleeping at night. So that just has to be factored in.
So their cars are here, but they're not living here, the 830, the differential between 1130 and 250.
By and large, and understood that not all of them drive, but those that drive, if they live on campus, then they don't have to drive anymore. They're already on campus.
I want to be a little more clear. What I'm saying is that your contention on the police and the retail was that they're already here because they're going to school there, but they may not be living here. So I thought you were saying that they're already here, meaning they're living here, but they're just not in the student-approved rental units.
No, and I apologize if I was unclear about that. Students live in a variety of places right now. They will live in a variety of places after the existence of this dorm. The development will increase the number of students that live on campus, but will not increase the number of students that are on campus on a daily basis because it's not increasing enrollment.
Right. Okay. Then I had just a question. I understand that in the retail part, 17,000 is it down to? I wanted to talk about, people have said a few times, and Nick, I'd like you to chime in if I'm wrong on this.
Leslie, you can ask a question of the witness. Just ask him a question about his
I thought part of the retail
testimony.
plans in the convenience store was also a pharmacy. What is your knowledge on what uses of the retail they're going to be?
That's for the university. That's the university's decision, is their program mix.
But you did impact analysis on the retail, and you came to conclusions, and so did your impact analysis include the actual uses? You talked about convenience store as part of the restaurant operated by the food service, and then it sort of went blank.
What I was interested in is the extent to which the development yields net new retail within the township. So on the margins, there may be some changes in the program mix. I don't know. That's for the university to answer. But it's my understanding that that amount of retail is simply an extension of, and in some cases, a shifting of existing retail. So the amount of net new retail is actually not that much, and it is largely student serving.
Would you agree that if there is a pharmacy, you could do an economic impact analysis to the brand new pharmacies that are right in Wayne, how that would impact their revenue?
You could look at the demand for pharmacy products as measured by those that reside within the township and compare that with the supply of pharmacy products that are offered by merchants that are located within the township. And you could do that supply-demand analysis to see if the number is tight enough such that the addition of new supply might therefore come at the expense of existing supply.
Would you agree that that the students currently living in Radnor Township and also on campus are in need of pharmacy products?
I assume so, yes.
Yes, so do I. Okay, so that may be something that I would like to go on record, that I would like to see a little more information on the retail and the specific, and how it would impact if there's going to be a pharmacy. I think that's very important to our township.
Ms. Morgan, any more questions? Because we have plenty.
No, I don't think so.
We have more parties, and I'd like to get.
No problem, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Okay. Gayla McCluskey here. Rick Leonardi.
Rick Leonardi, 30 Aldwin Lane. Tell me if I go too fast. Mr. Lee, you have testified that the likeliest scenario, as far as you're concerned, is that the rental units vacated by the students moving onto campus will be 100% backfilled by other students. Is the likeliest scenario, as far as you're concerned?
I did not say necessarily that it would be definitely 100%, but it will be very close to that, Mr. Leonardi.
Okay. Were you aware that one of the most compelling and attractive arguments to the CICD originally was that students who had hitherto been nuisances in neighborhoods, guilty of public drunkenness, urination, noise, police calls, that these people would be recaptured to the campus and the residential areas and the neighborhoods would enjoy a substantial shift in their quality of life?
I'm just going to object to the method of the question, I should say, or the question itself. I mean, because you put in
Well-
facts that obviously are not in the record at all.
Okay. I think the question is whether the witness is aware that one of the arguments that was made during the adoption of the CICD is that students would be removed out of the neighborhoods and on campus. Are you aware of that, sir?
I am aware that the amount of students that you want to have living in the township is within your control because you approve the student housing. So to the extent that that number is going to be the same, then I don't believe that there will be a decrease in the number of students living off campus within the township.
You testified as well that police calls may go up, but not much, I have here written down, that police activity in general is on the margins not going to be that much of an increase because students are being shifted from, yes, they're being shifted from the rental units back to the dormitories, but insofar as these are already Radnor residents, if you like, moving from one place to another, sleeping in one place and as opposed to another place, that these people are still under the purview of the police. The police are not going to be
Mr.
seeing any
Leonardi,
increase.
I'm going to ask you to ask a question.
All right. So
This is not-
It is your contention that the police will not be doing any extra business as a result of these students moving from the rental units to the dorms?
No, that's not my contention. I believe that the new development will increase the number of police calls that will take place. The two things that I wanted to say with that statement, though, were that one has to consider the fact that it is not an increase of plus 1,100 who weren't in the township at all and who are now in the township all the time, but some amount of activity and people less than that because these are students that were already on campus for a significant portion of the day. So that was the first point that I wanted to make. And the second point that I tried to make was that what you're looking at is whether that amount of projected increase in police calls rises to require a material increase in police expenditures, or can it or will it be absorbed by the existing equipment, patrol cars, staffing, et cetera, administration that the township currently bears?
I see. But the backfilling into the rental units by the students who are coming in to replace the students who have moved to the dorms, doesn't that represent an increase essentially in township population? Doesn't that increase?
Yes, and we accounted for that. If you consider the township-approved units to be a wash, in other words, you used to have 250 students, and now you'll still have 250 students, so there's no net change there. What we were looking at was the net change in the students that are on campus, the 1,100, however many beds.
Right. But overall, the police will be busier because there'll be more people.
That is correct.
My last question is, you stated that you looked at retail impacts. You state that the retail impacts are, quote, not that much. Is Villanova does Villanova's retail now involve the pouring of alcohol, the serving of drinks?
I don't know that.
You don't.
The answer is no. We know that.
After the dorms are constructed, will Villanova be pouring alcohol, serving drinks?
I'm going to object. I don't see the relevancy of this at all as to economic development.
There might be another witness later that you can ask that question.
The word keeps coming up that there is no new retail. That's new retail, and it is not marginal. Thank you.
That's not what the testimony is.
Okay. Mr. Heckscher, is he here? Anne Marie Hessman? No questions. Okay. Sarah Pilling?
Sarah Pilling of Garrett Avenue. Mr. Huang, I was only able to get a copy of your economic development report, so what I received, what I was able to get at was to see this chart that had a series of circles on it. They obviously were in color. Could you explain to me where Villanova is on this and where the limits of your 1 mile radius is that you were choosing, that the great would be the greatest concentration of Villanova students living in Radnor Township? Because I can't see it. I'd like to see.
We can
some
provide a
clarity.
copy.
Oh, if you just,
Sure. We can put it up on the screen, Sarah.
all right.
Ms. Pilling, you may have to repeat your question. I'll try to start to answer it, and if I miss anything,
Well,
just...
I can't understand from this piece of paper that I received which circle of these 4 circles applies to the Villanova students.
It's the green one.
Sure, it's in color, which is now up on the screen. It's the green one, which is the middle one, basically. There are 5, and it's the one in the middle.
All right, and the boundaries of that circle, can you tell me what those boundaries are? What does 1 mile represent?
Represents 1 mile from the center of each of the respective campuses.
And what neighborhoods does that include? Do you know that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
What neighborhoods in Radnor Township would be included in that 1 mile area? Do you know that?
I don't know the names of the neighborhoods, no.
Okay. I heard you, it's in the report, and I heard you say that there are 125 properties within Radnor Township that house Villanova students. Is that correct?
That are approved to house university students, not necessarily Villanova students.
All right. Did you receive a student rental housing list from the Community Development Department?
Yes, I did.
Now, knowing that Rosemont College could have off-campus living, as can Cabrini and as can Eastern, so it's a little difficult to parse it out. But are you aware that the township lists that there are 429 approved student housing units in Radnor Township? Not 125, 429.
The list that we received had a list of 125.
Right, well, here is the list from the Community Development Department. Have you read our student housing ordinance?
I have not.
Okay, it says in our student housing ordinance that no more than 2 students may live in a house. Do you believe that that's true?
Objections beyond his scope. He's he's testifying as economics.
Goes
not
to a
how
little
many
bit of a
people
different
live in
issue.
the house.
So ask another question, Ms. Pilling.
Do you know whether the township inspects the student rental housing and counts the number of students?
I assume that it's not necessarily true that in these units there are not more than 2 students. Whether that is a good thing and whether that is enforced is a matter for the township to handle.
Okay. So what you're saying is, in your testimony, that only 250 students that 250 students who live in student housing have the option of moving into the dormitories?
No, anyone has the option of moving into the dormitories. What I'm interested in is the effect of the new supply of housing on the township's housing market. And where that may have an effect is whether that empties out existing units, which then causes a potential problem for landlords, which results in a diminishment of value, which then results in a property tax revenue decrease for the township.
Okay. I suspect you don't know the answer to this, but do you know what the room and board component of the tuition is going to be when these dormitories are built?
I don't know that.
It would be interesting to know whether the room and board of the new dormitories is going to be less or more than the rent on the student housing.
My assumption is that it will be more because being on campus, people are willing, some people, not all, are willing to pay a premium vis-a-vis units that are near but not on campus. So typically, on-campus apartments go for more than just off-campus apartments. So I suspect that the amounts will be higher.
So speaking of Villanova's families who have students, what is, and I don't know that you can answer this, if the room and board might be more expensive on campus than living off campus, what's going to be the draw to have the students move into the dormitories? Just being able to live on campus?
Different people have different preferences. Whether they can exercise those preferences in the marketplace is determined by what supply options there are. The addition of the new dormitory will create new options. Some people will look at that option and say, I'm not interested. I never did want to live on campus. I like my off-campus apartment. Other people might want to live on campus, but the price tag will be too high. And other people will very much welcome paying more than they are now for the product that they really wanted in the first place but couldn't have, which was on-campus housing. That is going to be a matter of choice for different students and their families.
Right. I guess that's the last question I have. My final statements will be made at the end of the conditional hearing. Thank you.
Garrett Hill? Okay.
My name is Philip R. I'm questioning on behalf of the Garrett Hill Coalition. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Good evening, Mr. Wan. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. R.
I have a couple of questions. Let's see if I put this in right. On two areas, really. One is, the first one's on economic development. And thank you for your testimony today, by the way. Is there a new resident dining hall facility planned for these 1,100 plus students?
I don't know that.
You don't know that, okay. What are the plans to accommodate their dining? Are you aware of that?
That would be for the university to answer. Those are programmatic issues.
Okay. The kitchens, or I'm sorry, the suites that are in there, most of them are suites in this new dorms. Do they have kitchens in those suites?
I could look that up, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Is there any way we can get that information tonight, or do we need that another night?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
My question had to do with, do the suites, which accommodate most of the dormitories there, do they have kitchens in them?
Well, Mr. R., this witness is strictly testifying on economics and his report.
Right.
So that question is, what's the physical facility going to look like when it's built? What are that's for a different witness, not this witness.
Okay. Where I'm going with it is not just the facilities of it, just to be clear. It's the matter of the economic impact, because the question is, where are these students going to eat? And what businesses will they go ahead and have impact on, which affects economic development or economic impact of what's happening here?
Do you know that, sir? What the plans are for eating facilities?
I don't know the mix.
Kitchens,
I don't know the program.
Or any of that?
No.
Okay. Well, I guess I may ask it this way, and that is that if there were kitchens, would they need to be able to go to the grocery store and do that?
Students will need to eat. If they have kitchens, they
All right.
may,
All right.
they may cook.
Okay.
If they don't have kitchens, they will definitely not cook, at least in their rooms, or at least we hope they won't cook in their rooms.
Okay.
Yeah, they will have to purchase either prepared food or food for themselves to prepare in order to eat.
Thank you. And I might ask, will there be another witness that would be able, that's another time, to answer these kind of questions?
I'm sure there will be, yes.
Great, okay, good, thank you. Let me move to another area then, that happens to do with the dorms. Of course, when completing your economic analysis, the number of students that are going to be in these dorms is quite important to your analysis and impact on it, right? And you'd have some knowledge about the dorms, the beds and whatnot like that, right? Okay. Well, were you aware that in a fairly recent issue of the Villanovan student, that one of the campus officials was asked about the dorms, and I'll get to the question here. And the quote is, "The fact of the matter is that this project, what we're talking about tonight, will accomplish two things at Villanova. It will add beds to get more students onto the campus who live off campus, and it will help address the need for beds on the campus that we have right now. It will ease the impact of tripling. We can't move fast enough on both of these problems." Do you know what that meant? Are you aware of that? Do you know what that means?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. There's been no testimony on this. He's reading out of a newspaper article. The person's not here to testify. I'm just going to object to the question itself.
I guess I'm struggling. How's that impact the economic issues that?
Well, it's simply this, and that is that there's no, I'm trying to get the testimonies to how much this tripling effect will impact this development. How many of the beds that are being proposed right now, quoted as all new students, are really going to be reshuffling of students from one side of the street to the other?
I would think that's another witness, unless Mr. Wang, do you know?
I don't know.
Any of that information?
I don't know.
Okay.
If you want to speak hypothetically, we can talk hypothetically.
There's no need to speak hypothetically tonight. There will be another witness that will be able to answer these questions.
I would think so, and if not, you can call one.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. Thanks very much. I guess I'm short tonight. Thank you.
I think all the people that are parties have asked their questions. So the commissioners,
Yeah, I have.
you want to start on one end or the other? Doesn't, okay. Okay.
Questions. You discussed marginal changes rather than average, but did you give any consideration to the fact that all the current services may be at a maximum so that any increase, in fact, pushes you into another unit of service required?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Nagel. That is possible, so I won't rule that out.
So you did not consider that?
I considered that is possible, so then the question is that the case, and does the number rise to the point where you would have the next increment of hiring one more person, buying one more piece of equipment? I don't believe that's the case, but it is possible.
So your analysis really isn't bounding then?
What was the last word you said?
Bounding. I said your analysis is not bounding then.
It's what you're suggesting is possible.
Okay. Second, did you look at the effects during construction for increased services? And what I'm thinking of is you're going to be building on the existing parking lot, so there'll be a dislocation. I haven't seen any plan presented that I've seen regarding how that's going to take place, so I foresee a lot of cars parked in neighborhoods where they don't belong, a lot of policing efforts there.
I can speak to the economics of that,
Yes.
which is that construction projects can be disruptive, and they can tax. They can burden residents, they can burden businesses, and they can create an expenditure burden on the township. That's my understanding conceptually of why permit fees are levied. So this project would be no different than any other construction project.
Thank you.
And John, there is a phasing plan, I think, in the developmental impact statement, and we'll have testimony on that too, on the phasing. We haven't done it yet, but we have been planning to have testimony on it.
Mr. Huang, just have a few clarifying questions. to your economic analysis. Have you ever been employed as a director of finance of a government, any form of government?
I have not.
Have you ever managed a police department budget?
I have not.
And I apologize, I do not have your CV. Have you ever managed a fire EMS department budget?
No.
Do you have any direct experience managing public safety?
No.
Did you review the township budget?
Yes.
Did you review the staffing levels for the police, fire, and EMS?
No.
What do you base the impact on services in these areas on in your economic report if you didn't look at those things and don't have that experience?
I base it on a projection of the increase in activity in those areas, number one, and whether it rises to a level of significance to warrant a sensible interpretation of whether there will be an increase in expenditures. And secondly, mechanically, in some cases, those services do not, for a variety of reasons, do not fit within the township's budget, and so there would not be any expenditure impact on the township.
As part of your analysis, did you look at the police and EMS call log for the daytime versus nighttime on the university campus?
I'd have to look, but there was one case in which we had well, in both cases we had the total amounts, and in one of the cases we had the split, and so we tried to factor that in and tried to be conservative in terms of calculating the projected increase resulting from the arrival of the students spending the night on campus.
And you said split. Can you explain split?
As you mentioned, daytime, nighttime.
Okay, what time was the cutoff?
I don't know.
Did you use any metric to determine the police staffing levels for service needed based on the student resident population increase of over 1,000 students?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear it.
Did you use any metric to determine this police staffing level that would be required to address the increase in student residents who would be staying the night?
What we looked at was, based on the increase in students that would be spending the night, what do we project based on current patterns will be the number of police calls, and does that net increase in police calls spread out over a year warrant an increase in staffing?
What was that net increase?
55 calls.
Does your analysis, financial analysis, assume any fixed enrollment number for any fixed period of time?
Our analysis is working under the assumption that the student enrollment at Villanova University will not increase as a result of this project. I'm not sure if that's if that's an answer to your question, but
yeah, I wanted to know what the assumptions are in your model.
Yep.
And currently, I believe it's 4,400 student beds currently, and the addition of 1,130.
Yeah, that's my understanding. 5,500, 5,600. Yeah.
So in essence, about a 25% increase of student residents on campus.
Yes.
And is the 55 calls, is that 25% increase in the number of calls?
It is my understanding, based on data that is from the Township Police, that there are 203 after-hours calls. 55 is 26% of that, and my math is that the on-campus population would increase by 26%. That's where that number is from.
Okay.
And now that I have the report in front of me, the cutoff is between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. or anything else, after hours being considered everything else.
Did you review any campus security records to determine service levels on campus for the security department? And I'll clarify. I don't believe all incidents on campus result in a call to Radnor Police. Just want to understand, did you look at the service levels of the internal security department?
The number that we're looking at is calls to campus. So that's the metric upon which we're basing our number crunching.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Huang, follow-up, calls to campus, you mean police visits on campus, or does that mean phone calls? What is calls to campus you just said? It's calls to campus, it would be calls to the police, right? It would be calls to campus must mean visits from police to the campus at Villanova.
Yeah, I believe that's the case, Commissioner Booker.
So this 26% increase to 55 means police visits on campus from Radnor Police, not phone calls to the Township building, et cetera.
I believe so.
Yeah, police calls mean the police actually show up. and
All right.
visit, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
They're not phone calls.
Very good. I want to go back to the table on page 30. In the table, total taxes and fees, $5.6 million in one-time revenues is what's been testified to, correct?
Yes.
The earlier question regarding base of operations relates to ongoing, relates to gross receipts tax. And really what we mean here is Radnor business privilege and mercantile taxes. So how were these numbers calculated? Specifically, what were the revenues and how were they derived as far as these business privilege and mercantile tax numbers? 1.3 million, 1.34 million.
Let me try to answer that question. I'm not quite sure I understand it, so let me give it a shot, and then you can...
Well, how did you calculate that?
Sure.
Is that a number of people? Is that a specific dollars? How was that calculated?
Input-output models are used to translate activities, in this case a construction project, into a certain amount of direct activity, which then results in indirect and spillover impacts.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is to figure out the composition and scale of multiplier effect associated. We have a sense of how much the construction project is itself. The challenge is to figure out what is that composed of and what does that then yield. To size that to the township level and then to translate that into a certain amount of, in this case, upfront, one-time temporary increase in tax bases, which multiplied by the tax rates gives you the tax revenues. So that is the methodology by which we go from a $269 million project to a certain amount of upfront tax revenues that are and fee revenues that are generated from it.
Basically, what you're saying is that a $200 million project can result in more than tax on $200 million at 3 mills, which is what we have in Radnor. And in this case, I think it's about double, right? So there's kind of a double. It's over 400. I calculated 400. So what that is a stacking effect where one contractor will be paid for a contract, and that contractor would then buy services from another contractor, which would also be subject to the business privilege and mercantile tax. And also, maybe that third contractor might also buy or pay other contractors, which also might give incidence to another taxable event. And that's why you have greater revenue than what the overall one-time project would be.
It also accounts for the fact that when people work on construction projects, they get paid, and when they get paid, they spend some of that money, and they spend some of that, and some of the money that they spend is in the township. So there is an amount of economic activity that is happening over and above the $269 million construction project.
Okay. You also testified you don't know what a base of operations is for purposes of Radnor's business privilege and mercantile tax?
It's my understanding that if the activity occurs within the township, it is, and the entity is not tax exempt, then that activity is subject to the gross receipts tax.
Actually, my understanding of it is that for there to be tax on a contractor, say, that they would need to have a base of operations within Radnor in order for the payments or the revenues generated by that contractor to be subject to business privilege and mercantile tax.
Rich, just to let you know, that is not my understanding, and I've represented people in the past on this issue, but
Well, let's-
that's a legal issue between
Yeah,
all of us.
Right, this is a legal issue. It is my understanding. In other words,
But Commissioner Booker,
yeah, no, I'm trying to get to.
let's ask questions too.
I'm trying to get, and that is a question. Do you know what a base of operations is? The answer was no. His understanding is that all revenue generated within Radnor would be subject to business privilege and mercantile tax. My understanding of that is that's not the case, that you need to have a base of operations. In other words,
If a
transient.
contractor is working in the township for
Transient-
for a
excuse me,
year,
excuse me, Jim, excuse me,
that's
excuse
a
me,
base
excuse
of
me.
operations.
Yeah.
If he's working in the township for a year, that's a base of operations.
Well, it may well be. The standard for that would be a base of operations needs to have some permanent or semi-permanent locations. And the case law actually refers to construction trailers, okay?
All right, we're supposed to be
So-
asking questions,
I
not
don't,
making
yeah,
arguments.
I
Why
have
don't
nothing
we
to say
move into
about that.
questions?
If everyone would just let me talk instead of being so defensive, then we could move
You
through
can
this.
talk, but make
All right, wait,
questions and not arguments.
If you're going to argue about asking questions, or do we want to ask the questions, please? I am arguing with you two right now. Now, here's the question for the witness. How did you did not discount, or you did not allow for any revenues that might escape taxation in your model based on the fact that either there was no permanent establishment, permanent base of operations, or otherwise?
If I've misunderstood what is meant by base of operations, and you are correct, then our number would be overstated. That's correct, because we are assuming that all of this activity is in fact taxable.
Okay, so you're stating that this could possibly be overstated, and I would.
It is possible if I have that incorrect, yes.
Right. Secondly, I noticed that there is no ongoing business privilege and mercantile tax revenues accounted for within the model. Presumably, my question to you is, you did not include that, the assumption being that you looked at this and that based on your understanding, that there will be no increase in business privilege and mercantile taxes rather on an ongoing basis.
No, there's a difference between I think the number is 0 and I didn't tackle that subject, and I did not tackle that subject. That does not mean that I think that the number
You
is
weren't
necessarily
asked
0.
to tackle that. You weren't asked
That's
to
correct.
evaluate.
That's correct.
On an economic analysis, I'm surprised that you wouldn't want to know about an ongoing annual fee. Why was that excluded from an economic analysis?
I was advised by counsel that that was not something that they needed me to look at.
I would submit that that would be an important element to a economic analysis. Counsel,
And that goes to your deliberations on a decision at the end of all the testimony. I mean,
do you have any view on whether there will be any ongoing business privilege and mercantile taxes, recognizing that you did not evaluate that?
That's actually a pretty complicated question, so I don't have an opinion that I want to state for the record, no.
So if I make the statement that there will be no additional business privilege and mercantile taxes as a result of this project, you would not be able to refute that?
I would not be able to comment whether that is correct. It could be correct. It could be incorrect.
So you would say that that could be correct, that there would be no increase in business privilege and mercantile taxes as a result of this project?
That is possible.
Thank you. With respect to the number of students who live currently off campus, how do you account for the disparity in the 125 units versus what one of the people, Ms. Piling, testified that there's over 400 on the list of student housing in Radnor? And did you, obviously, I think you said you did not check that list that's available by the community development?
I have never seen that list. If the number is higher, then that does mean that there is a greater possibility that some of those units might become inhabited by non-students. It is also possible that my main argument is still the same. It isn't just students that are living near campus that will inhabit the proposed development. It could be students that are not living in the township at all. So whether it's 250 or 430 or some number higher, that may or may not make a difference in my judgment on what's going to happen to the housing market.
Understood, but my question was, what do you think accounts for the disparity between those two numbers?
I don't know because I have never seen that list.
Did you do any research on the 125, or were you given that number and you took that as granted?
We were given a list. We looked at that list to make sure we understand, to make sure that we understood it, and that was what was that was the number and the list that we ran with.
You also testified that your belief was that, with respect to the 125 units, to the extent that they are vacated and those students move into the new dorm, that replacement students would then come and take over those apartments and those units. That's 125, close to 100%, you said.
Yes, the economics suggests that.
You also suggested that there would be no, that your model assumes that there's no increase in student population at Villanova University.
It's my understanding that the enrollment will not increase as a result of this development.
So how is that consistent if new students come in to those apartments? Are you saying that those new students would have to be at other universities and they would not, your model assumes that none of them would go to Villanova?
No, there are, and I don't know the exact number, 10,700 students at Villanova. Am I in the ballpark?
We'll take it for 8,000, whatever,
Yeah,
good
I
enough.
think undergrad is about 6,400.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. There are three major universities that are whose students are vying for these 250 spaces. Of the student population at Villanova, 4,400 of them currently reside on campus at an additional 1,100 and change. That number will go up by an additional 1,100 and change. Some of that will come from the 250, some of that will come from other students that are living off campus outside of the township.
I'm sure you understand my question. The fact that 100, say, leave those and move on campus, and you have 1,100 that you're going to bring on campus, there's going to be backfill of those other students. Assume that those 100 are also going to Villanova. Wouldn't you therefore have an increase of 100 students on Villanova's campus?
You would have an increase in the number of Villanova students that are living on campus, but you would not have an increase in the number of students that are enrolled at Villanova University.
Why not?
Because it is a shifting of their residential location from one place to another place, but it is not an increase in the student headcount.
So if you take 250 people who live off campus today, you bring them on campus, they're filled with new students.
Those,
Would you admit that there's would you deny that there's a possibility that they could result in additional Villanova students from that and additional enrollment?
it's my understanding that Villanova will not do that. The 250 spots will be filled by other students who are and were and will continue to be Villanova students that were living somewhere else that will now, or other university students, by the way, and Villanova is the biggest one here, but by no means the only. So those 250 will move on campus. The 250 spaces will be filled by other students.
And that will not result in any increase in students, is what your contention?
Yes, that's my contention.
Would you agree that it could result in additional students?
No, I don't think that it can, because Villanova has stated that there will be no increase in enrollment. They will not bump up the number of students that they enroll in the university. So that is a fixed number, as far as I understand.
So if that is the case, and those units are filled with new students.
Well, they're not going to be new students. They're going to be existing
with
students.
new students relative to that residence, then it would have to be students at other universities.
No, it could be Villanova students that are living in other parts of the Commonwealth that are now moving closer to campus because they've always wanted to be closer to campus, but there weren't any available township-approved units. And there's a filtering effect where students that are near, students that are near campus, students that are near campus will now be able to be on campus. Students that are further from campus will now be able to be near campus.
I would say,
Remember, Commissioner Booker, you are all judges sitting up here. Hearing testimony and deliberating and ultimately making a decision.
yes, I recognize that. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Rice. And this is not a part of the economic. I know that Mr. Wang doesn't know this, but if you would, I would like to have some sense of what the controls would be that Villanova is under. My understanding of it is Villanova will not guarantee that we're not going to increase enrollment, but if that's not the case, then
We can
But that-
probably get
I mean,
another witness to go
Yeah,
over
there's,
that
I mean, there's
subject.
questions that can be asked of other witnesses. This is on economics. I mean, if you don't have any more economic questions, then let's move this along a little bit.
all right.
I mean, there's a lot of questions like that residents have asked, but there's witnesses that will come up, and we can ask all those questions at that time.
No further questions.
Commissioner Curley.
Sure. I understood your testimony that the number of students living in the community would not change, but I'm assuming that the distribution of them would change. Is that accurate? Meaning the number of Villanova students relative to the entire population would change?
Living off campus, but
Yes.
within the township?
Yes. So we'll just have a different distribution of students, but the same number of students in the community. That's the way I heard your.
I did not say that, but I can opine on that. The students that would vacate as a result of the Villanova dorm will be Villanova students. The students that occupy the newly available units will be some combination of Villanova and other students. And so the percentage of those 250 units that are occupied by Villanova students will probably go down slightly.
So the mix changes, the number stays the same.
That's-
Is there a reason to expect an economic impact from the change in the mix? Would that have a positive impact, no impact, or a negative impact?
Landlords are going to want to rent to maximize their ability to charge as much rent as they can. Somebody's going to want to pay that, whether it's a Villanova student or a non-Villanova student. I don't think that will have a material difference.
Very good. Thank you. Nothing further.
Well, I'm okay. Mr. Booker covered the things that I wanted. I had this notion that, very simple notion, that all of Rosemont and Garrett Hill would be emptied out of Villanova students, and that would be wonderful. But what I'm hearing is that they're going to have new ants coming in and occupying those rentals. So I now understand that situation, and I appreciate the testimony and Mr. Booker's questions. So we had Mrs. Bailey that wanted to testify. I want to say that I think we need a recess here. There are more witnesses from the applicant, so I'm going to ask that we come back
And just one other thing, Mr. Schneller, I will talk to you during the break because your standing will be an issue in terms of becoming a party. Mr. Cornelia, but we can talk about that because I think we need to understand where you live in relation to this project. So we're going to take about a
10-minute recess.
10-minute break.
Yeah, I already had it. Didn't tell me, Charlie, after my money.
All right, we are back in session, and we have a request from Mrs. Bailey to become a party, and I'm going to turn things over to John Rice at this point.
Okay, we have two individuals that have asked to become parties tonight. Mr. Schneller asked during the break whether he could become a party. I know that Mr. Cornelia is familiar with Mr. Schneller, Mr. Bola. Do either of you have any objections to Mr. Schneller?
I object to Mr. Schneller's participation as a party of this action.
Okay. Mr. Schneller, could you come up and just, let me just ask you a couple questions. You can stand there. No, I don't, no, he's not going to testify. Where do you live at? What's your address?
430 East Lancaster Avenue, St. David's.
Okay. And how far is that from Villanova University? Do you know?
It's under a mile,
Under a mile.
yes. Because I
Okay.
travel through there every other day.
Okay. I think everyone
That's not
up
right,
here
is it?
believes that it's over a mile.
It's more like 2 miles, isn't it?
So my, Mr. Cornelia, do you have anything on the
Yes.
distance? You're,
I mean, Mr. Schneller, the distance obviously is the distance, and I believe is over a mile also, but he's not an immediate neighbor. He has no direct injury peculiar to the property. It's just a remote consequence, and any injury he may have is just a general concern common to all the citizens and not to anyone particular to this neighborhood, which would grant standing.
so the standard in the state for zoning hearing boards and for this board in a conditional use proceeding, any kind of a zoning quasi-judicial board is pretty well established. The most recent case is a case called Laughman, Laughman versus Zoning Hearing Board of Newbury Township. The case site, because I know Mr. Schneller is going to want to look this up, is 964 A 2nd 19, and it's a 2009 case. And it says that unless you have some special, in order to become an aggrieved party and to have standing, you have to establish that you're an aggrieved person. And if you are 0.8 of a mile or more away, this case says you're not close enough. You have to be close to a project in order to be able to make a showing that you could be injured in some fashion. So is there, other than where you live, Mr. Schneller, is there anything else that bears on the issue of standing?
You and Mr. Cornelia are familiar with some of my arguments, and I won't go through them. However, in this case,
Just on the issue of standing, do you pay real estate taxes in Radnor Township?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I happen to be a resident in student housing, so I would be, and it's one of the student housing in that inner ring that the witness has emphasized is a high state of flux in this matter.
Okay, so other,
Do you own real estate in Radnor Township?
I do not, no, I simply
Then
pay
you don't
taxes.
pay real
through
estate
my-
taxes.
Through my rent,
Okay.
so your landlord pays real estate taxes?
yes.
Okay, it's my recommendation that Mr. Schneller be denied standing as a party in this case based on the Laughman case.
Can I please ask for time to look up the case and come back?
And based upon no other special interest in this particular project.
Can I ask for the table to vote until I,
All right, does any, I'm going to ask the other commissioners how they feel. My view is that Mr. Schneller does not qualify.
Same.
Yes, I would see it the way the solicitor identified it.
Mr. Booker? Mr. Fisher?
I'll take the solicitor's opinion.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's 5 to 1. there with-
Okay, Mr.
all right,
Schneller.
I've asked for a chance to respond. I wasn't prepared for this. I had no idea. I was told at the last meeting by an official of the township that I could simply show up And
Request. You can always show up and request. You don't show up and automatically become a party.
I think I should be given an opportunity to at least respond to Mr. Rice's.
Mr.
What is
Schneller-
a singular case.
Mr. Schneller, you have filed hundreds of pages of responses in this township with lawsuits over the
This is
last
inappropriate, Joe.
5 or 6 years. Most of them have,
This is conditional use.
it doesn't matter. You can put something in writing, but the
Thank you.
board just made a decision, and I would suggest that the board vote on this.
All those in favor of denying him status as a party, say aye.
Can I get your address one more time? Let me just look it up at Google. What's the,
Where's the equity here? Where are you gentlemen gonna?
So, Jim, in my opinion, the equity is that we had this specific discussion on the first night. We established criteria on the first night, and you don't fit into the criteria that we established. And now we're getting a recommendation from our solicitor saying that there's objective information that supports that criteria.
Yes, but he's
So
based it
now
on
we're
a
voting
singular
accordingly.
case. He's based that on one case, which,
Another one, Jim. William Penn Parking, the 1970. William Penn Parking, it's a 1975 Pennsylvania Supreme Court case,
why shouldn't
346
they bother?
A
Mr.
second,
Nagel?
269. So look that one up, submit something in writing, but I think the board can make a motion and then vote on this, and we can move on. And the equities is the resources that are involved when somebody who's not a party, doesn't have standing, files lawsuits, files appeals constantly. I have,
Well, there's no
I
see, now
have
you-
files like that from Jim Schneller. So that's the equity.
And
It's a
under-
cost to the
Under
township,
6
Jim.
cases that were taken to their logical conclusion. I am not a frivolous, I'm not a litigious litigator.
Last time I checked, the last brief I checked the appellate courts, and Mr. Jim, you had 100 appeals pending in the appellate courts, or 100 appeals that you filed within the last
You're
5 years.
appealing to the emotional side of things.
All right, I'll
right,
I'll
yeah.
move that Mr. Snow does not have standing.
Second.
Second, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
So in the face of an honest
It's,
argument, you then take
excuse me,
that
excuse
additional
me.
step.
The vote is 4 to 0 with one abstention. 5 to 0 with one abstention.
And that's
Thank you.
that's based on exorbitant figures given from.
We're going to move on now, please.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Ms. Bailey.
I want to, please come up. I want to recognize the presence of Mr. Stephen Gabriel, who is Township Planner, who is assisting Mr. William Bola. I didn't point that out earlier.
John, I think she's already been, I think, Mrs. Bailey, haven't you already been accepted? I think last meeting, weren't you already accepted as a party?
I would like
I
to become a
believe.
party as an individual.
Oh, well, you were not in as an individual? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have her listed. So your address?
Is 132 Barclayton Road. That's in Conestoga Village.
132, I'm sorry?
Barclayton Road.
Could you spell Barclay? I'm sorry.
B as in boy, A-R, C as in cat, L-A-D-E-N Road.
Okay.
And post office. And post office, because I need this to notify you and keep you in the loop.
Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. 19010.
And your name. I know everybody else knows you, but I don't.
Tony Bailey.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any objection from Mr. Cornelia?
I mean, I remember Mrs. Bailey here last time asking questions. I thought she was already admitted as a party. You were saying that you were asking questions on behalf of whom last time?
Friends to Preserve Radnor.
I mean, she's already asked, I mean, I would argue that last time she asked to be qualified as Friends to Preserve Radnor. She asked questions on behalf of Friends to Preserve Radnor. You know, I would object to her being individually allowed as a party now.
And I have a question about that, John. Is there a point at which we allow a group to come in? Do we then allow every single member of the group to be a party?
If you're represented by a group, you should stay with the group. I mean, I wasn't. Were you here representing the group last week or the first night?
Last week, she was here on behalf of I believe, Friends to Preserve. Because I know her questions were regarding the chapel and everything, and it's,
Well,
I think she's within 8/10.
yeah, I'm aware of that. It's up to the board. You have an objection.
John,
You already have,
how many times can people come in and get standing? Until the end of the hearing? You come at the last meeting, get standing?
It's up to the board. You decide. I mean, I've seen it, where people show up, at any point during the hearing.
I would argue, just, let's give her the standing. The questions that she has may only be 2, and we've spent more than that amount of
My
time.
question is, somebody come in next week to ask for
Yeah.
standing, 5 people next week? They
What
don't
if somebody
come
was
every
on
meeting like I do.
vacation all summer?
Tony, are you with the same group that Leslie Morgan represented when she was asking her questions?
No, I was not Commissioner Higgins.
Okay. What
Who's
group was,
who's
what group,
representing your group?
what group did Leslie Morgan represent?
Oh,
And that's who you're with?
I thought she was representative of another group.
She said, initially, she said she said Radnor Taxpayers Association, and then she corrected it and said Friends to Preserve Radnor.
Okay.
So you already have a spokesperson, and I think Mrs. Pilling has already, but you're a member of Friends to Preserve Radnor? Are you a member of Friends to Preserve Radnor? Are you a member of it?
She's an individual, Jim. She's an individual.
We have a list of Friends to Preserve Radnor. It was the first night that we did this, I thought we had a list that was going to be produced of all the members.
I think an email was sent to you, Mr. Rice, with a list. Very few members.
Okay.
I forget.
There's only 4 people.
Right.
The reason why Tony is applying is because
You have to come forward, please.
I mean, I'm inclined to say if Ms. Bailey's on that list, then she should not become a party separately. If you want to become part of a group, you're in the group for all purposes.
Right. The confusion is, my name is Tish Long, and I live on Aldwin Lane. The confusion arose at last meeting because Leslie Morgan was intending to speak. But I believe Peter was here in your place that evening, John. And so I spoke, and then Tony spoke, also for Friends, because we were given one other speaker that evening. And then Leslie was denied speaking further in the meeting. So the
As another member of the Friends.
Exactly. So I had emailed Bob and I copied Bill regarding this, and we thought that we only now have one other person who may speak and she may not speak, and that will be Maya. And so Maya, Leslie, and myself, and then we felt it best for Tony to get her own status because she likes to speak at the meetings, and I didn't want her to be denied that privilege for having been part of the group.
But she's in part of the group, so she's in the group, right? She's on the list?
She is on the list.
Okay. And
But
I
so
think
then how will we
that's the
handle this
problem.
at the next meeting or the next
How you
hearing?
handle it is Tony gives whoever your speaker is going to be her questions. Everybody get together and get a list
Okay.
of questions that each of you individually want the spokesman to ask. Your
Okay.
spokesman has already spoke tonight, and you're a member of that group. So, I mean, I'm inclined to move on and.
Do you?
and-
I think that's a bit harsh, frankly, because I mean, we were not aware of that. We're new to this whole hearing process, and I would hate for Tony to have her own opinion or question to ask and not be able to have that opportunity, given the fact that we're sitting back there and to be passing papers back and forth. I mean, clearly this evening, we wanted Leslie to do the questioning that is her area of expertise, certainly not mine or anyone in the group. And I'm sure
Well,
that will be.
I'm sure we could have Mrs. Morgan take the questions from Tony now. and-
She's left
Well,
for the
no, wait a
evening.
minute, I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then Miss Morgan could come up, and with the permission of the board, ask those
Look, why don't we
questions.
make it simple? She's a member of the Friends. Tonight, we'll let one extra member of the Friends speak. We won't give you standing, but we'll let you speak tonight as a member of the Friends, but you don't have standing to get up every meeting.
I don't
and
have
speak
any
on your own.
objection to that.
Okay.
Move on,
Yeah,
let's move forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening to the board and to the Villanova staff. I just have, hopefully this will be short and sweet. I have a question. Has Villanova University agreed in writing to a cap in enrollment in both undergraduate and graduate students?
That's a question for the university.
Do you have any knowledge of any plan to cap enrollment?
I'm going to object. Remember, this is about economics.
Right.
This
When
is
we-
about his economic analysis, the report that he filed.
2, is the public welcome to the retail site that you have mentioned?
That would be a question for the university, but it's my understanding that while it's student serving, it's open to anyone who wants to frequent these establishments. It will not be promoted to, it will not be promoted to non-students. It will be largely student serving, but it's not exclusionary. A representative from the university can confirm that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Mr.
I
Cornelia.
guess it's back to me, and I am going to be brief. You heard the real property, the real estate where this development and the parking lots are taking place, is that currently tax exempt from real estate taxes?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Going back to your table 5.1, let's just do a hypothetical. Say that Villanova pays $100 to the general contractor. What business privilege taxes are paid on that $100?
Well, that would represent revenue to the original GC, and to the extent that that GC has no subcontractors, then that would be it. But if it does have subcontractors, then those subcontractors would be paid a certain amount, less than 100, and that would represent revenues from those subcontractors and also be taxable.
So if the GC is paid 100 by Villanova and he pays a subcontractor 50 of that 100, how much business privilege tax is the GC paying on?
The GC would be paying on the 100, the sub would be paying on the 50.
So in effect, that's the multiple that we were talking about earlier.
There is that effect going on, yes.
Are you aware whether when an applicant comes in with a development, they post escrow money in order for the township staff and township professionals to review the plan?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And are you also aware that an applicant frequently posts escrow money for independent people, independent from the township staff, to come out and inspect as well?
As needed, that's my understanding, that's the practice.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Bola.
Just very few questions, and only to introduce an exhibit. Mr. Huang, were you given a copy of the report of Stephen Gabriel, the township's planner in this matter, that was sent to Mr. Cornelia?
Yes, I've seen a copy of this.
All right, and that's his report and letter dated August 19th, 2014?
Yes, I've reviewed the points that speak to my part of the report.
Very good. That's all I have. At this time, I'd like to offer Mr. Gabriel's report, which I have pre-marked as Exhibit T2.
Okay. That'll be accepted as Township Exhibit T2.
Is that T, John?
T.
T.
T, yeah, Township. Okay. Mr. Cornelia, you have another short.
I have a short witness about evacuation plans. This is short.
Yes, I do. Alice Lenthe, Lenthe.
I'm sorry?
Alice.
No, I do not. So, yeah. Wait a minute. Yes.
And we swear in? We did? Okay. Alice, what is your profession?
I am an occupational safety and environmental compliance professional.
And currently, by whom are you employed?
I am employed by Villanova University.
What is your educational background?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering with a concentration in environmental engineering from Lehigh University.
And how long have you been employed by Villanova?
I've been employed by Villanova since March of 2014.
And your position at Villanova?
I'm the Director of Environmental Health and Safety.
And prior to being employed by Villanova, how were you employed, by whom, and what were your duties?
I was employed before Villanova by Merck & Company in West Point, Pennsylvania, and my final position there, I was Executive Director of Environmental Compliance and Occupational Safety for North America and Puerto Rico.
And did you happen to prepare an evacuation plan for the dormitories the proposed dormitories at Villanova University that are part of this development?
Yes, I did.
And did you prepare in conjunction with anyone else at the school?
Yes, I worked with David Tchaikovsky, the Director of Public Safety.
And we're going to we show on the screen part of the developmental impact statement. I believe it's Exhibit A, which is the overall development of the plan. Could you tell the board how an evacuation would occur in a case of emergency in this development?
We looked at this residence hall complex as two groups of 3 buildings. There's the group on the left and the group on the right. And for the group on the left, the muster point for evacuation is the courtyard of the group on the right. And for the group of buildings on the right, the muster point for evacuation would be the courtyard of the group on the left.
And does this adequately serve the purposes?
Yes, I believe it does.
And in what way does it serve the purpose? When you say an evacuation, what are we basically referring to?
If there were to be a fire in one of the buildings, we instruct the students where they would evacuate, what muster point they would go to so that we could account for the students. And this plan is a good one, in my opinion, because it is simple. It's easy for them to remember. And in a fire situation, we strive for something simple so that there's a minimum of confusion.
And is this similar to the evacuation plans for the rest of campus?
It is very similar to other plans on campus, yes.
That's all I have.
Just very briefly, ma'am, thank you. How is this communicated to the residents in the dormitories?
There are evacuation diagrams that will be posted in each building of the dormitory and reviewed by the resident advisor with the students in each section of the dormitory.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Do we have this exhibit in evidence?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is already in.
I was just wondering, what do you do if there's a problem in both buildings?
That's a good question. If there would be a problem in both sections, then we would have staff on site and we would work with the students in that area and evacuate them to the parking areas, to the outside of the dormitory complexes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, does the evacuation plan also provide guidance to Villanova's security personnel on driving that evacuation of the building?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
I didn't hear Mr. Nagel's question, but you said the muster point is in the courtyards for the 2 buildings?
Yes.
Students are in the courtyards. Now where are they going?
Well, if there's a...
If they have to get beyond the courtyards?
If they have to go beyond the courtyards for some reason, then they would go to the parking areas on either side of the entire complex.
You're talking to the west?
To the west and to the east.
And to the east. And actually, are there archways among the dormitories?
There
themselves?
are, and can you point out, there's a walkway that extends through the entire complex to facilitate that kind of movement.
Okay. Any other questions? The board? Okay. Mr. Cornelia, you have one more witness, and I guess...
Can I ask one question about the evacuation?
Of course.
Do these buildings have elevators? Or will these buildings have elevators built in?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Will there be fire escapes to remove these students? Or are they going down fire towers? Or what happens to the people who are on the fourth floor if the fire's on the first floor and they can't get out?
The buildings will be built in accordance with code.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question to that. If you're not aware if the buildings have elevators, how did you construct the escape plans if you don't know the design of the buildings?
This is a conceptual plan. As the building is designed in a final design state, we will finalize the evacuation plan.
Okay, thank you.
If I may follow up, so that plan would be submitted at subdivision and land development approval if the conditional use is approved, is that correct?
You'll have to ask someone who's more familiar with that process than I.
Mr. Cornelia, would that be correct?
I know it's not part of our land development process. The reason we presented this is that the township engineer requested an evacuation plan as part of the conditional use.
Right, and he requested it, I believe, just like many other issues, so that they can be discussed and thought about and pondered in the event that you have conditional use approval, and then presented in a more substantial form at land
We can
development.
certainly provide
Thank you.
a more substantial form of land development process.
Okay, so it looks like we're at the end of the hearing, and we'll come back next week with the transportation engineer, and who else, Mr. Keneally?
There
Anyone else?
will be, the other architect, John Kluver, would be testifying at that time also, and we also would have the special event person hopefully testify at that time. So that's probably 3 more witnesses. I would ask that perhaps I know we have one hearing scheduled. If possible, can we schedule another hearing?
Well, let's go off the record, though. I have a list of dates when the room is available, and if I could ask everybody.
While we're off the record, and Nick, I was going to ask you just personally anyhow, there's been a lot of indication that a representative of Villanova University would answer a number of questions. Is there going to be such a witness?
We haven't really thought about it because we don't know what type of, normally the architects are the ones that should be answering those questions if you're talking about the development itself.
Well, Mr. Bowler, you can always subpoena somebody.
We'll talk. We'll resolve it.
But
not to worry.
I mean, there's a lot of basic operational questions and enrollment and.
Nick and I will work it out.
Okay. Okay, so let me go through some dates that I have that Jim has given me as available. September 29th and September 30th are both open.
What days of the week?
Monday, Tuesday.
30th is good for me. 29th, I have a hearing.
Any commissioner have a problem with the 30th?
I don't.
When's our next regular?
For me, it's as far as I know at this point, I don't have a conflict.
So it sounds like the 30th, John.
Okay. September 30th looks good.
When's our next regular meeting?
And then there's one here for the 17th.
Yes, we know that.
Okay, so that's September. I'm into October now. I have October 2nd.
Which is?
That is a Thursday, the first Thursday of the month.
Thursdays around?
I'm not available. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Okay, October 7th is the first Tuesday of the month.
All right with that?
I'm 2 places that night. I haven't doled out who's going for me, one of them. I'm sorry.
October 8th is a Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the month.
You're not available? Are you available on the 8th?
I can be.
All right, well, let's do the 8th, John.
Okay, we got September 30th, we have October 8th. I also have October 9th as a possibility.
What day of the week's that?
That's a Thursday, that's the next day.
No, that's out. Yeah, it's out.
October
October what?
October 14th and 15th,
What days of the week?
Tuesday and Wednesday.
What do you want, Tuesday or Wednesday?
I'm available on the 15th.
All right, 15th. 15th.
15th?
Yep.
I'm out of town.
15th.
Anybody have an objection if Commissioner Fisher reads the transcript?
Well, they
Or
objected last time, so I would imagine the logic would be the same, correct?
I don't think I objected. I
any of
certainly-
the parties?
Some of the parties objected last time.
Oh.
Well, they're parties.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, the parties to this objected. I object also. I think it's because this is literally my backyard. I need to be here.
What's it, how long are you away in October?
Back that night. I'm flying back in.
Okay, I have the Monday, the 20th, actually that whole week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Monday. Any
I
commissioner
can't,
call Monday?
I cannot do Monday, the 20th. I could do Thursday, the 23rd.
Thursday, the 23rd. How about Tuesday? No Tuesday or Wednesday that week, Mr.
Tuesday,
Ball?
I'm in Bedminster. Wednesday, I'm in Middletown.
Thursday, the 23rd?
Just have to be here.
All right.
Okay.
That's 4. I think that's more than enough. I'm going to bet we're 2, maybe 3 more hearings.
It's all up to you.
It's Nick's fault.
I think we are off.
I got September 30th, October 8th, October 15th, October 23rd is what I wrote down.
Was the 15th still?
Oh.
That was John.
Oh, the 15th, do you have a conflict?
What are the dates, John? Run the dates. September 30th, October 8th, and October 23rd.
Plus the one.
And this is in addition to September 13th, 17th.
Yeah, that's plenty. We'll have to do it. Nah, we'll get it.
So this hearing will continue on September 17th at 6:30, and we'll see everyone then. Thank you.
Good night.
John, how many more days are we going? 4 days?
Yes.